Cybersecurity Refined and Feral, where refinement meets chaos in the digital wilderness. We will bring you perspectives from a seasoned professional and another with 5 years of experience. Join us while we discuss the challenges of our profession from multi-generational views with unique mother-daughter conversations.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cybersecurity Refined and Feral. I am Candy Alexander.
And I'm Cailin Sullivan. We're so happy to have you here with us. Today we're going to have a great conversation on certifications, which, will naturally flow into what our current job market is and where we are as a profession. Certifications are definitely like an industry now, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Just the fact that, as you know, Cailin, I've dragged you out to RSA for way too many years. And look what happened. You came into the profession. But, in my capacity of working with the ISSA International Board of Directors, I had the pleasure to work on the ISSA research paper on cybersecurity state of the art of our profession. And part of that included a question asking about certifications. How many certifications did people have, and so on and so forth. And the last time I was involved with that research study, there were, I believe, like well over 175, 76 certifications. Unique, by the way, certifications. And that was just maybe 2 years ago. Actually, oh my God, I think it was 2020.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. It had to have been earlier than or later than that, maybe 2022?
Maybe. But here
because the 2021 was the virtual RSA because of the pandemic.
Right. But here
and then we went.
It was a long time ago. In technology speak, it's been a few years. But again, the fact of the matter that it was 175 plus unique certifications. So I would say yes, that clearly the security education industry has embraced that concept of certifications and therefore have, pushed them. So
yes, I would have to agree with that. With some of my classes that I've been doing, the material is straight from either there was the CEH, so Certified Ethical Hacker.
yeah.
And then this most recent one, I think, was from, I don't know, I don't remember. There's too many classes. But the colleges are definitely pushing these certifications too.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And so I do know a lot of folks have reached out to me when I, have done public speaking and whatnot, and they'll or post on LinkedIn, and they find that as an opportunity, of course, as always, to reach out to me and ask, a little guidance. Which certification should I go for? Well, understanding that there's 176, I would have to say to really narrow it down to those that are most asked for in a job posting, which in my opinion, there's the top, I would say top 5 now. And this was also identified through the ISSA research paper, right? Which, by the way, we did partner with ESG Enterprise, oh my gosh.
Security group? Strategy group?
Strategy group. That's what happens when you get to my age. But anyways, ESG and John Olsick, he led up that effort. But so the top 5, in my opinion, and was also that of the opinion of our professional respondents, was that it was for entry level. It was CompTIA Security Plus.
Mm,
That's really good starting out type of certification. And then from there, from a generalist perspective, and I would have to say, I believe this is the oldest certification, and
mm,
that ISC 2, I almost said ISC squared, ISC 2's CISSP, Certified Information Security Practitioner, Professional Practitioner. Um, and so that is like the gold standard.
mm,
Close second to that is the ISACA certification for Certified Information Security Manager. Um,
mm,
and then I would turn to Certified Ethical Hacker. And then the fifth that I would recommend, it would be the Cloud Security Alliance and their certifications. And so
mm,
that like a lot of them. And I would recommend any of them. So it's all in regards to job relevance. I think another thing that I would also share is really think about what it is that you're looking to do with your career. Like if you're
mm.
just starting out, I'm sorry, CompTIA Security Plus. So really, again, really good place to start. And
Yeah.
then generalist, those two that I mentioned, which I, by the way, have. I'm proud certification holder, have that designation of a CISSP. And by the way, 4-digit number here. And then the CISM. And then from there, so those are the generalists. And from there, it depends on what you want to do. If you're getting into cloud, then by all means, go after the Cloud Security Alliance
Mm,
certifications. If you're into red teaming, blue teaming, ethical hacking, of course, the CEH, the Certified Ethical Hacker that you mentioned. And yeah, so it really depends on what you want to do with when you grow up. What are your
mm.
thoughts?
Yeah. I think it's important to note that the CISSP requires at least 5 years of experience to even attempt.
Yeah.
I believe I'm registered as an associate CISSP, so that just means I'm a member of IC2. Um, and I think it gives you access to certain resources, and then enables you to then get the CISSP once you reach your 5 years. I think the CISM is also it has like a requirement for you have to be a manager for a certain amount of time to even apply for it or try for it.
I think that's five
Yeah,
years too. I
yeah,
know when I got grandfathered into it, when it first came out, the requirement was 5 years. So I would not be surprised. But
yeah.
um, I can tell you, even back when I took my CISSP exam, it was a life altering event. It was nerve wracking. Back then it was like the 10 common bodies of knowledge, and it was at minimum a 3-hour exam. And I mean, it was proctored and just it's serious business. And I'll never forget. At the time I was in the ISSA New England chapter, if, and we had been waiting. We took our exam. Robin Wheeler and I took our exams together. We went to Texas to do that. That was a road trip. That is for yet another time. That story. But we were back at a chapter meeting, and we were like, "Oh yeah, we're waiting to hear our results." And back then, it took like 3 months or something crazy like that. And so we were talking to this, I can't remember his name, but he worked for, I think, Verizon, and he was a cryptographer. I mean, and this man was brilliant. Him and Simpson Garfunkel. I mean, they were brilliant young men, and they're like, "Yeah, gee, I hope I pass." And I'm looking at him like, "What are you kidding me? You're worrying about passing?" But that's how serious it is these certifications. That's why I hold those to the higher standard, because it's not something you can buy. You have to work for it, and you have to maintain it with CPEs and whatnot. So, yeah, it's pretty serious stuff. And I guess that's why, they come about. And so let's explore that history for a moment, because I think it's really important for people to understand why we as a security profession came up with those certifications. And so a little unknown history, I think, is when the profession first started coming to be, believe it or not, ISSA recognized the need for certification, right? To be able to articulate and prove to the world that individuals a company is working with has a minimum baseline knowledge in this brand new specialty area called information security. So I believe that ISSA had partnered with perhaps ASIS or ASIS International, which is known as the Physical Security Group. And I believe there might have been one other. And there was an entity that recognized that need. And ISSA did not want to have that, partialism to a certification. So we said, let's spin off another organization that is not connected, because ISSA to this day remains agnostic to training and certifications. We support everything, right? And we did not want to start that certification and have that be gone. So that's how ISC2 got established. And that is, the purpose for the certification was to ensure that, if you saw somebody with CISSP at the end of their name, that it meant something. And I think it still does. Would you agree?
Yeah. I actually have a separate question. Is when this might correlate to the creation of the cert, is there weren't that many degree programs around information security back then, right? So this is a way for individuals to prove that they know what they're talking about.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. I think it still holds its weight nowadays, and even now people talk about how hard it actually is to get it. And so I can only imagine how much more information there is in there now than when you first took it, because we have like mobile, we have AI. I don't know if that's in there yet, but I'm sure it will be. So yeah, I can only imagine.
I can tell you that to this day, this is the life-altering part of like how significant that testing was. I can tell you the melting temperature of a floppy disk. It is 140 degrees, just so you know, because there's a little tidbit that has stayed with me for my career. And that obviously is no longer applicable. But to your point, they are constantly updating, those questions and or making it relevant. And I think that's the important thing too, is that it remains relevant. We tend to lose that a lot in our daily lives, the relevance of things. So
yeah, I would hope that they would take out the old technology questions then, and not just add on to them.
I don't think that the melting temperature of a floppy disk is no longer there. I'm pretty sure of that. But
now, was that the thin floppy disk, the big one, or the one that the save icon is?
The floppy disk is a floppy disk. It was the film of a floppy disk, like a record, as opposed to the platters of the hard disks, which,
Mm.
that's a different melting temperature. But again, I remember the floppy melting temperature point. But I think you raised another really interesting point. And by the way, for our listeners, we also like to touch on history because it's important to recognize how we came to be and how we got here, the path. So we don't replicate those lessons learned, and we can build on lessons learned. But you did raise an interesting point that I forget, in that when I first started in cyber or information security, and when the profession came about, it was unheard of to have, never mind a certificate program, like we have today with higher education, but a degree program that didn't come about for some time later. So that, to your point, raises the value placed on those certifications even more, and not just the value of, but for non cyber or information security people to at least have some level of trust that an individual is trained. Because even today, without that ability to measure someone's knowledge before you hand over the keys to your systems to lock them down, you want to make sure that they know their stuff. So that's a really good point. So I'm glad you did.
That might be a good segue into your opinion on certifications versus degrees too.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Hot takes.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. The candy rant. So, as you know, Cailin, and I'm not sure how many others really know this, but I do not have a formal college education for a lot of reasons in my early years, in that I had a mother with a critical, illness, disease, which was Lou Gehrig's disease. I didn't have that opportunity to go to college. And so I instead jumped into the workforce, and through, again, the security gods, which I always refer to, I was fortunate enough to start working at Digital Equipment Corporation, which I went through and learned from, some extremely brilliant people. So that, does and directly speak to experience versus learning, right? The book learning. And I'll never forget when I was at Digital, and this is when, my short career as a secretary, and yes, we did call them that when I was, for an engineering group, which was hilarious. The vice president of storage engineering, we were at lunch, a Christmas lunch actually, and I remember him turning to me, and we were having a conversation about, some of the interns and some of the new graduates coming in and working with our group. And he had said, Candy, he says, one of the first things we do when we get new hires from like MIT and like all these very prestigious schools was we tell them immediately, forget everything you learned, because now you're going to learn our way. And so it was that mentality that I grew up in at that company, and I did absorb so much. And, granted, they did have a lot of training programs. They had, something Digital University, which we refer to as DECU, and, all kinds of training opportunities like that. But I did learn that. So, and of course, the certification helped prove my knowledge and experience, right? And so when we look at college degrees versus what I just mentioned, the experience and on-the-job learning opportunities, I'm not completely in favor or not opposed to, of course, college educations. I think that it's like everything else in life, it's a blend of both, right? Because a lot of people, again, they'll say to me, how do I get involved or how do I get started in cybersecurity? And, we had this conversation in our introduction episode. You need to get in there and get your hands dirty. You need to find out whether or not you like it. But at the same time, you need to learn the fundamentals, the methodologies, right? Like the CIA model, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What is that? Not even just what is that, but how do you apply that? Because that, believe it or not, is foundational to everything from an acceptable use policy. And how do you apply that to, data protection and data governance, right? Again, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and using that with the pyramid approach. Like you only have one top of the pyramid. So is confidentiality the most important? Is it integrity or availability? So being able to apply those things. So again, knowing the book smart methodologies, but the ability to apply them is what's really, really important. So, of course, being my daughter, I fully support that you have. I loved your approach of getting into cyber, seeing if it's really what you wanted to do when you grow up, and then go in. And it's the hardest track to follow, but to go in and go back to school while you're working, full-time job. But, that's not a bad way to go about it. So those are my thoughts on that. And now that you have taken that approach, what are your thoughts in regards to formal university education versus, coming through with on-the-job learning and experiences?
Yeah, this might be a hot take. The degree to me is just, like you said, it's just proving that I know what I say I know, just like a different method. Companies too now are more accepting of people that don't have college degrees, which is great because not everybody has the ability to go to college. So it's opening up that talent pool to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to be in it. In fact, I had said at one point, like, figures, now that I went back to school, all these companies are like, we don't need a degree. And I was like, are you kidding me? But it's definitely worth it. One of the things that I do struggle with, though, is that hands-on experience versus the knowledge versus educational knowledge. Like, I have learned things through experience, but according to the text, that's not the correct answer that they want you to give. So struggle with that a little bit as far as like, I've done this in real life and this is not how I did it in real life. Why is this answer wrong? Especially when it comes to, projects and stuff.
Yeah.
That was also an issue with when I took the Security Plus certificate. There was some questions I'm happy to say that I passed on my first time, but there was some tricky wording to some of the questions, which they definitely do on purpose, that make me think, okay, well, in my real life experience, the answer is this one, but according to the book and the study materials, the answer is this one. So then it's like a toss-up of 50-50, like, what do they actually want?
Right. But you really raised an interesting point in regards to like security knowledge assessment tests through your, formal education as opposed to on the job learning and training. And it reminds me back when I was going for my test, right? It's like, okay, you're studying for the test because if you remember, I think we mentioned this in the introduction episode, is I got my certification through digital when digital decided to have everybody get their certification. So we've been all doing it for a little while. And so we would get into heated debates with the instructor, like, no, that's not how it's done. And so, and then of course, finally, the poor guy just backed off and he says, listen, we're just going to be studying for the test, okay? And so I think that that's the challenge and the frustration, is understanding that you're going to be going through the formal education. You need to look at it from what the textbook says, as opposed to the practicality of implementation. And so I think the challenge there, how that happens, is through something that, I've talked about in the past, is you really have to realize, in order to update the college curriculum and the materials, that it takes anywhere from 16, 18, 24 months, right? Because you have to identify the need to update. You got to proof it. You got to, circle it through the curriculum, and that just doesn't happen overnight. And that's the unfortunate thing of, the college education. And, that just made me realize that's probably why that VP of storage engineering at Digital said, forget everything you learned, because we're now going to teach you our way. That's probably why. So I think this has been an age-old issue with technology, and it probably would be. So for those of you out there that are college students or university students, recognize this now, that when you get out of your degree program and you walk into the job and say, well, that's not how I learned, know that that's probably what you're up against, right?
Yeah. That's an interesting point too. In one of my classes for the cybersecurity management and policy, it was like a technology class, or I forget exactly, but all of the articles that were provided in the resources for us to like read each week were all old. And I was so mad, because like, why are we looking at such old stuff? But you brought up a great point about how it needs to be approved, reviewed, edited, distributed, like it needs to go through its whole process. I wonder if there's a way that universities can speed up that process for specific technology classes, because it develops at light speed. If that would help too with the disparity between education skills as far as like learnings go versus the applicability to real world stuff, if that would narrow it more.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it is interesting, and I don't know if there's an easy answer to that.
Yeah.
And so then that circles back to the original question, which is better, on
Yeah.
the job, training, real world hands-on experience and training, versus college degree and education, is ironic, because, I don't want to leave this topic of certifications, but I would say that I'll offer this, and then I think there's a couple other points we want to make about certifications. The point I want to make is that I remember a few years ago asking, or there was that question, as a hiring manager, which would you take? Somebody with a college degree, or somebody with 10 years experience in the area that you're looking to hire? And you can guess what a hiring manager would respond with. So I think that's something to think about. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not going, either way. I'm being refined, Cailin. So there's that. But let's talk a moment, because I think this is another thing. This is a hot topic. Well, not so hot as much as controversial. And that was the posting on LinkedIn. You want to give the background on that one, because you're the one that brought it up to me.
So by the time we publish this episode, it'll be a couple months later. But it was a post that Ira Winkler had posted about the ISC 2's report on the perception of certifications, and how the numbers weren't matching up exactly.
Yeah. So I think Again, it goes back to how we began this conversation that, certifications are controversial if you really follow that world, if you will. Like I said, 170 some odd certifications. It's a business. It's almost, I think this is the point that Ira was trying to make, and I'm not trying to paraphrase Ira. So, Ira, if you ever hear about this, I'm not trying to paraphrase, but I'm trying to articulate perhaps what I think you were trying to say, and that was or is certifications have become a business. It's a huge moneymaker today. And that and this is the part I think we as the profession need to pay attention and ensure their integrity, the integrity of the certification bodies and or the certifications, that we don't get into alphabet soup behind people's name for the cost of a few $1,000s, that we really need to ensure the integrity and the main purpose, which again is to provide an opportunity for those not in our profession to understand the level set of knowledge and experience that one has to have for that qualification or certification. I am still a huge proponent of ISC2, just as ISC squared and just as ISSA. I think that sometimes we all get a little lost in our journey, and we have to be reminded of what our vision and mission is and get back on track. And I think that's what Ira's intent was. Again, Ira, if you're listening, sorry if I misspoke, but I would agree with that's my view, that we all need to be brought on track, and we all need to ensure the integrity and intent of those certifications. They are valuable. It's just when you get to the other 150 certifications out there that I'm really not sure what they do. I think that's that. So, do we capture everything that we wanted in the topic of certifications, or what else?
I think it might be worth talking about how, since we're on the topic of certifications, how like somebody that wants to, for example, me, when I wanted to get into cyber, they have some companies will pay for like training or whatever. If you're in that job, if it directly relates to your job, but
Yeah.
I wasn't in that position, but I wanted to learn about it in order to apply for jobs. So it was a catch-22 as far as, well, I can't afford the SANS training, so what do? And
Right.
where to go from there? Um, was using Udemy and YouTube and
Mhm.
Cybrary when it was free, as far as, doing little studies. Then I moved internally and was able to purchase at the expense of Carbonite the exam for the CI, not for the CISSP, for a Security Plus. So then I was able to attain that certificate. But for those who can't, what other options are there?
That's a great question and a difficult to answer.
Mm.
Of course, right? That's probably why you're asking it. I think I would recommend, just as you had done, go to look at the study guides for various certifications, and that would be for CompTIA's Security Plus, or if it's for the CEH, Certified Ethical Hack, whatever. And as you know, I am such a YouTube junkie. Whenever I want to learn anything, I go out to YouTube because it has it. Whether or not it's right or whatever, that's another story. But I can say, for the most part, the YouTube videos I've seen on the cyber are pretty good. And
Mm.
there's something for everybody, right? No matter what your learning style. If it's goofy and jokes and humor that you learn, that's there. If you're looking for really tech geek out type of conversations, it's there.
Mm.
So I would say study guides, just do all the prep up to
Yeah.
that point. And I think you brought up another really interesting facet, and I think ISACA has this as well as ISC2 is the associate
Mm.
level. And so you can't, you don't meet the qualifications for taking the exam and whatnot. However, it demonstrates to the world that you're aligning with that and you're preparing. So in other words, you're putting in that personal investment. And as a hiring manager and or as somebody looking for new talent, that's what I would be looking at. Like if
Yeah.
somebody came to me and was looking for a job and I saw that they had invested their own time and uh, opportunity to go and do that, I would take them any day, because it really comes down to the passion that demonstrates passion. And again,
Yeah.
you're willing to put the investment in.
Yep. I would also suggest maybe reaching out to the local community, whether that's through like an ISSA chapter or communities on Reddit, communities on Slack, workspaces, um, and asking people if they know anybody, like if there's any way that they can help you or any kind of tips they might have. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah.
good suggestions. Because let's face it, I know um, just about all the people I know in this profession. All you have to do is go up and ask them. Remember these conversations I'd have with you is like,
Hmm.
all of us in cyber, we're very passionate about what we do, and we'd like nothing more than to talk about it. Hello, podcast. So,
Hmm.
for listeners out there, do not hesitate to approach somebody you know in cyber, and ask questions. They're more than happy to take the time and talk with you about all of those things. So, yeah. Let's see. I think perhaps we only have a few more moments left. I do have a hard stop. Sorry, my real job getting in the way. Um, by the way, we do this at our lunch hour. So, this is again that passionate demonstration we're talking about. So let's fold this over into certs and how they relate to jobs. And I know another point of reference I'll bring up on the ISSA ESG Enterprise Strategy Group from TechMD. I'm sorry, not TechMD, Tech Target. Sorry. Too much information in this head of mine. So we'll put the pointer in our description. But another point of reference in regards to this is the fact that there was a study. It was part of that study. 39% of the people who responded believe that getting a certification would help advance their career. So that suggests that they're in their career, they're working towards it, and then they, like you had done, Cailin, and I had work, their job, their employer, pay and support them through that journey of certification. So I think that's interesting. But also, they said that 26% um, replied to the question, what can you do to improve the chances of getting hired? 26% said that having a certification would help, which is really interesting because that is a lot lower than it used to be. So,
Yeah.
what do
Yeah.
you think on that? What's your take?
My first question when seeing something like that is I'm looking and wondering about what the demographic is of the people that answered. Because if it's mostly mid-level and higher, they're not going to, like, they already have their cert. So I don't necessarily know if they would say that it would improve their chance of getting another job. As
Yeah.
well as students for those entry level that might not already have a cert. So I think there's a little wiggle room there for that. Otherwise, the only other thing that I can think of is they put more weight on experience over certificates.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very perceptive of you because now I do also recall typically because the respondents were ISSA members and
Yep.
um, the demographic of a typical ISSA member used to be, I don't know if it still is a mid-career individual or senior level person. So that would hit on the point you're making is that more than likely they're already in the job, so having that certification is not as important as the hands-on experience. So again, I think that's pretty perceptive of you. I think I know there's also a lot of things we wanted to talk about with the job market, but unfortunately I don't think we have the time today, so we'll have to use that for an upcoming episode. So
Yes.
like to do a call out to all of our hopefully new and loyal listeners. If you could please consider subscribing to this podcast, hit the like button, and provide any suggestions for topics you'd like to see us have a conversation about, because we were trying to have these conversations that invoke thought-provoking conversations for you to have locally and or with your peers and colleagues. So again, with that, like and subscribe. We will include some references in our description, such as our emails if you'd like to contact us, as well as the link to the research study where you can download not only this most recent survey from ISSA ESG, but as well the previous one, so you can see the trending. And so with that, until next time, I'd like to just say that to remind you to stay secure, stay refined.
And don't be afraid to get a little feral.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.